Welcome, welcome to the Dutchman's Wood Shack. Today, this morning, I'm going to be wiping off a second coat of Wipe On Poly. Now, what I've done here is it's dried overnight. I let it sit 12, 14 hours, and you can see how dry it is, right? So, this is a warm satin finish, so I'm not looking for really a lot of shines on it. So, just a satin finish. Now, I'm getting low on this stuff actually, but a couple of things I want to point out. One is I'm using wipe on paper, paper towels to wipe on the finish. If you ever try to use stain towels, the finish um, look darker because the stain will come off. Eventually, after 4 or 5 coats, you'll get a darker look to it. Especially if you're doing friction polish, and it does make a difference. Okay, today though, I'm doing this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit on here. I don't need a lot, and I'm just going to wipe it on. Now, I like doing it this way. A lot of guys like to use brushes too. You can do that. I've done things with big pieces of furniture with brushes, and it's okay. The only problem is if you put too much on, you'll find yourself fighting the drips. That's the only thing about this stuff I can tell you is the drips. It's not drip friendly because it's almost like water. To be honest with you, it doesn't have a really thick, you know. But see, that's the way this stuff is. So right now I'm doing the inside, hoping I can see from the shine from here if I'm getting it all or not. So it doesn't need a lot, but in this case, a lot of times I'll end up putting a lot more on it to get a little bit more of a better look. So, I yesterday when I first initial wipe on was really good looking. So I'm impressed how this wood shows up. That's the other thing. I don't think I've ever used a finish that doesn't darken something when you put it on. There's a lot of these finishes will be dark, make the thing look darker. Um, I don't know, there's probably something out there, but I haven't found it yet. So, as you can see it has a lot of characteristics in it. That's what I'm looking for. So with this, I want to take and turn this. This is a piece of ash, by the way. If anybody wants to know. I got the wood from Batavia Hardwoods in Illinois. They're in Batavia. They're on McKee Street in Batavia. They have a good selection of turning materials, which not a lot of people have. That's the big thing. They have a lot of stock in there, and that makes a difference to me because it's hard. Otherwise, I have to buy pieces and glue it, and it can get really expensive. So, okay, so now I got this. I got this down. It really looks good, right? So, really good wipe down again in here. Now, one thing I got to tell you is you want to make sure you put this somewhere where it's dust free. So, I'm gonna go stick it in the drying room. I'll be right back. Okay, so another thing to be aware of too. All right, now let me clean up the top a little bit. That's the only bad part about you want to be able to get something that's small in a small container if you don't use it right away, because it'll harden up in the. Hey, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whatever. Now the other thing is too. All right, a lot of people don't know this. Get a steel can that's airtight. And why do you say that? Is because spontaneous combustion. That's why. So now I'm saving these. So I'm not gonna throw them in there. But the last thing you want is a fire, right? And having been an ex-fireman, I can tell you it is true about spontaneous combustion. So I've seen some crazy stuff in my time. Trust me. Hey, how you doing, Hunter? Nice to see you. Welcome to the show. So that being said, all right, I'm going to clean up a little bit here. Now, my next victim is going to be okay. So what I want to talk about here today is how I'm putting my uh, project together. Oh, you see my eggs? You see my eggs? Okay, so the story behind this is whenever I do segmenting, if I do a real thick layer of stuff, these are the corners I cut off those bowls. All right, so and I glued them together. If you do it right and you cut them right, they're exact. So I decided one time I was going to goof around and see what I could come up with, and that's my two eggs. I've got to take and varnish them yet, but I just thought I'd show you what you could do with scrap wood. No, it's not crap wood, it's just scrap wood. Okay, so what I want to do now is I got that one bowl done. Did you see? This is one of my fun bowls. All right. So, two things about resin stuff I want to talk about. Okay, so when I'm doing resin work, all right, a couple of things you have to be aware of. One is moisture in the air. Okay, so let's say you're using wood like I did on this. There's a I have a moisture meter to test it with, and you're usually what you do is you want this wood here to be down around 5% moisture in that wood before you start putting resin in. So what I did this time, when I did this, it was actually bad resin. It didn't cure the way I wanted. It took me about 2 months, if not longer, for this stuff to run. And I always thought it was going to be a piece of junk. And some of my videos on my channel here will explain that. But it came out way better than I thought it would. Now there is issues with this, and in the middle, there's a little bit of, you see how it's defect, a little bit of a white, uh, or maybe green. That's because of the stain, the dye in there. But on the wood, same thing here, right? And in this too, with the discoloration is because of the wood. Because the wood, there wasn't, when I put it in, there wasn't a lot of moisture. But it wasn't enough to get all the moisture out. That was one thing. And I think it was a combination between that and bad resin. The other thing is your joints. Okay, so a lot of the joints here are okay, like the sides are okay, but I'd say probably half of them are okay and some of the other half aren't. All right. So, um, I'm all for experimenting, but it's difficult to use wood. Now, I used three other bowls I did with wood. I sold two of them already a while ago. One had cut off dowel rods in it, and it was, they with the big problem I had with that is they floated more to the top instead of at the bottom. But I didn't realize that was going to happen. So that was my second bowl. My third bowl, I actually put a cut off piece of branch in, and when I turned it, it was fine. It was the better of the three. Or actually, no, this is like number 12, I think, or number 8 and 11. But those two were sold. The first one I did is kind of a this. Okay, so it was this. So this is the reason why, and I polished it actually. I'm working on polishing it some more. Um, I'm, I'll probably keep this to give me myself a reminder how difficult it is. But the crustiness in this is the reason why it didn't turn out. And what was in the crustiness? It was too much moisture. I keep finding this out about wood. It's kind of like you want a solid instead of a wood in here because it doesn't seem to be that good. Now, for when you're doing slabs and you're making tables, that's a different kind of resin because you're doing volume and you don't want it set up that fast. The stuff I'm using sets up a lot faster and it's a little bit more difficult stubborn wise. And this, I'll put out a list. I'm trying to figure out how to do this on what to do and what not to do when you're doing resin work. I'm not an expert in it, obviously, because but this one here was the first one I did. Did I get rid of it? No. I usually keep the first one anyway, no matter what happens. Okay, so now this is part of that last batch that I was talking to you about. Now, here's a couple of things to be aware of. They turned out fine in the middle, but air pockets. See the white stuff again, there's wood in here, all right? The white stuff again tells you there's something wrong there. And there are a little bit, this one's not so bad. There's an air pocket right there and one right here. But here's what I'm doing with this. I'm not doing the outside of this. I'm just going to do a little bit of the bottom here and do the inside because that's the way I said it. There's a piece of coal wood in here. And what happened is this piece broke off. Well, I was turning it once before. And I said instead of gluing it, I put it in a bowl. And it was a coal whip bowl, believe it or not. But it turned out okay. I mean, it's kind of a different thing. Why did it do this? And I'm finding out maybe I should start doing things differently. I used the three things that I did that worked out good was I made Christmas trees. They turned out great, and I did a couple of small Christmas trees with pine cones in them. And they were okay, but they still didn't come out because, again, it's the wood that's in them. Okay, so you want to try and get as much moisture out of that as you can. And the only thing I do is I've got to kill them. I put them in the kiln, let them sit there for an hour or two, and then I pull them out. And I'll stick what I've done this last go around is I'll stick the whole bowl and the wood in there and all the stuff I'm going to use, except for the liquid. Now, my kiln, see, there's a crock pot back there in the corner. I discovered something here the other day that somebody didn't mention to me, and I didn't know this, but okay, so you're putting air into it, right? Okay, so I usually crank it up to 65, 70 pounds. Well, the last batch that I did, these two, I did it, it was almost 80. All right, but the thing that's bad now, and I've got to figure out this, I got to talk to some people about this. There's moisture in the air line. Okay, so I've got a tan up in that closet. There's a pan compressor in there, and it works great. But when I pulled that plug out, when I pulled the hose off, I when it released the air that was in the lines, it felt like there was moisture in that air. Okay, so now you're plugging it back in and you're pumping air into it, and there's moisture in the air. So you're adding to the problem, especially if you have wood, right? So now you just put moisture back into the wood. See? So if you're going to do a resin bowl, sometimes it might pay to be uh, more resin than wood, or just resin. Now, when I did the Christmas trees, I had in a coffee cup that was a 16-ounce coffee cup, and I put it upside down, and I had an actual stump that was cut off a Christmas tree, a little piece about an inch thick, and I put it in there. Once I mix everything, I actually mixed a bunch of scraps off the floor that were resin into where that Christmas tree is, and put that coffee cup with that top, stuck it down inside my crock pot, and when I came out, it was great. Um, and honestly, and I didn't have a lot of wood in it. The ones I did the uh, pine cones with, it didn't work out only because I think the wood, um, when I was carving, the idea was to make it so this pine cone was on the bottom in a 16-ounce cup, and what happened was I think I took too much off when I was carving it because I do carve it a little bit, and that kind of added to it. So, you know, hey, welcome. Uh, Thanks for following. So this one will be the next one. Okay, so I'm working on that one. I'm also working on a segmented one. That'll be a different story because again, it's a different thing that I'm doing here. So here's this is a lot more heavier. Now this is the segmented one. All right, this is my version of segmented. A lot of guys like to do it a different way. I believe there's three different ways to segment. This is just one of them that I use. Um, so this is the bottom and this is the top. Well, I reversed it before and I'm thinking, nah, this way. So now I've got an oddball shape, right? So here's the thing. I have to cut the corners off of this, both, to make it fit, because this one's the tightest I can go is 11 and 3/4, and that's not because it's 12. It's 6 here from the center down to here, so I don't have any room. See, so I have to be really careful when I do that. I'll take this off first and then put the spindle on it. But one thing I got to do here is I got to find the center here. and the center on here in order to put it on here with the other spindle so that it doesn't wobble. And you're gonna get some wobble in some of these, but that's one thing you got to do. The other thing is, um, normally I center it. I take a center punch, and put a punch there or a hole there, or even if I'll use a small drill bit and do that. Then the other thing is I'll take and draw a circle on it with my compass. And one of the reasons I do that is because that'll be my outside rough cut. It also tells me if I'm off. So let's say that you're wobbling a little bit and you have that circle on here, or it's oblong, that'll tell you. So when you're making something like this, the idea is this is the light color, this is light color right here. So the idea is you want that to match up, right? So that you don't get too carried away with something else on this side. So this is dark and this is light. That tells you you're offset. Now it does, in a way, the looks look better if they match, but if it doesn't, it's okay. I mean, it's not a big deal. It adds characteristics to what you're doing. So the only problem with doing segmented bowls, guys, is it takes forever to do the bowls. You, you just don't glue a bunch of wood up for one. I mean, I had to take and basically cut this down, run it through the thickness planer, do about 15 things before I could glue it. And then when I glue it, it takes forever to glue all the, to glue it up. I have to do it in segments. The too many have a tendency to move around, and you have a certain jig for that. So um, that's how that works. The other thing is the types of wood. Now I do have hardwood mixed in a little bit here with softwoods. The problem with that is if you got a softwood next to one of these softwoods like this is basically old baseboard. I forget what kind of wood that is. It's a softer wood than these two, and this is poplar. And what happens sometimes when you're sanding, you get to the sanding part, the finish part, it'll what I call bleed over, or it could burn it if you do too much of it. Trying to get all the divots and stuff. It's nice if you can get, and like I like the dimension look, the 3D look. If you could get all hardwoods and it can be all different colors, but it's hard to find that. So you just kind of work with what you got. And I'm a scrap guy. I like to go around and get scrap. Now, if you're ever practicing and you want to do this, just get some 2x4s. Go behind the stores and get permission first. Go behind a mall or somewhere or a store and see if you can't get a pallet and pull the pallet out. I've made a bunch of this stuff in here. Up here, on my ceiling's done with barnwood and pallet wood. Um, didn't cost me anything. The barnwood cost me a little bit, but I was going to use that for picture frames. I ended up getting out of that and doing this. But it you basically you want to learn before you start doing it. Okay, the first one's going to be the prototype. You have to get used to your tools and how this stuff works, and that's where patience comes in. That bowl, like bowl like this, that's what happens. That's what happens when you don't know, and you never asked anybody who does this. Problem is, I did ask people, but nobody likes to do it. I'm in a group with a bunch of guys that like to do just turning and not really get into any fancy stuff. So some do. Um, See, I like fooling around. The problem with this resin is for 2 gallons, what is it, two and a half? For the amount of liquid I have over here, I got 4 gallons, I think. It's $250. So, and that stuff, I mean, the only thing is with that too, it has a shelf life for 6 months. You better use it within 6 months because you don't know what it's going to be like later on. The other stuff is more forgiving, but that's for doing tabletops and stuff. Anyway, back to this. I'll be doing this next. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna size up and get everything centered before and I've got to get the corners off. I've got to find out how round I want this. and do a few things. I don't think you guys need to watch that, but um, I'm gonna do this later on tonight probably. Uh, I've got to center this so I can turn it. Again, I'm just gonna take and put a little bit of a mortise in here um, so that I can get something to grip to, and just carve out this stuff in here. That'll be, again, patience. All right, patience with this. A lot of people just like that look, and I like it too. But unfortunately, some of that's gonna come. A lot of that has to come out of there. Otherwise, it's just a piece of whatever. I guess you could use it as a paperweight. Okay, so I'm gonna drop this over here. I'm gonna put some stuff away. Um, yeah, one day we'll be doing a box. We'll be doing turn boxes. This is kind of my latest one. Now, I got it as best I can get it. I still have a problem with my inside part, but it actually came together pretty good. Um, it's not as tight as I would like it, and part of it is too. You gotta. It's such a like a 16th of an inch looser than I'd like it, but it's tight. It's not moving. That's the only thing. Um, but I think once you seal this, then it'll tighten up a little bit. And the other thing is, when you're turning it, you got to look at your top. And sometimes the wood could be a little bit narrow. Now, see, now, when I was turning this, um, I wasn't prepared to. You can see where it's a little bit thinner here than on the top and where it hits here. And that's part of because when I was turning it, I turned these two separate, and I didn't turn them together like this, so that I might not add this. But to me, it's not a biggie. It's you learn as you go. The idea though is to make a box like this, and then you could get fancy and make a flatter box, make it come out further. You could do. One guy I know makes round ones like this. They're about that skinny. I mean, thickness wise, and he makes the tops in there like different colored stuff. It's really fancy. Again, it's in the wood. Whatever project that you're going to be making, you want to make sure that you get the right wood for that project. I like the 3D look, so I'm always going two-tone with stuff. This is a piece of poplar, so, and I like the color, the softness of it. I don't know if I'm going to stain this or not. Um, I kind of like the look. It's got like a little bit of a green tint. But here's the thing, you got to remember when you seal this with something like that wipe on poly have, it's going to darken it just a bit. Now, the wipe on poly that I like would probably be good with this because it's not going to, if I want to keep this color and not stain it or something, that's usually a good one to keep. That it's not going to change the tone of your wood grain at all that much. So shellac will do it because it's yellow. You can make your own finishes to do it. I just like to have a simple finish. Most people, when they go to the store, if you're new at woodworking, you just get like I said, the wipe on poly, or you get the general finish, not the spar varnish. But again, the spar varnish is thicker than the wipe on poly. Do you put it on with a rag or do you put it on with a brush? I personally would use a rag because what happens is, and you put it on light. You always put it on light because what will happen is it'll run, and you're forever chasing those runs. If you get it the first time around and it's running, you're gonna have to take it down again. Then you have to sand and sand and sand. There's a trick in doing it. Sometimes I use a sponge. You can do it, but you have to put it on real light. Again, some of them can be diluted to make it be like a wipe-on poly. But I kind of like to stick with what I have. I've never had any problems with it. So anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. Uh, it's noon probably for me. I got some stuff ready to do. I'm gonna start cutting this and setting this up and get it all set to show you guys later on. Um, like I said, oh, here's another thing too. Now I did wipe on poly this a little bit. So yeah. And the other thing is you can feel a little rough. I gotta do another buff. The other thing is you could buff this too, just so you know. Get like 3,000 grit sandpaper and just barely touch this up. And then you can take and you can actually put some wax on it and wax it on, or use some carnauba. That'll work too. But I don't want a very shiny piece. So that's okay. That's just out of a full piece of 4x4. And again, the only thing I did wrong with this, the stupid inside, I was trying to seal it with some resin I had, and it came through. Didn't come through the way I wanted it, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna put this up for sale or just give it to somebody. But anyway, that's that's my stuff. These are real easy to make, and you can make them where affordable. You can make them for family, friends. If you want to sell them, you can sell them. You can actually, if you're a carver or a wood burner, you could do some designs on the back of it. Or if you're a pyrographer, you could actually do a bunch of stuff on it. Now, I'm a big uh, wood fan, a good Hawaiian uh, knowledge fan, because I go there all the time. And one thing about the Hawaiians is they take their literature, their art forms, their um, history, and put it on things. And if you've never seen it, it's amazing what they do. And I kind of looking for to do that kind of stuff. I'm not always going to be doing segme, but again, it goes into what you pick. And if you get a piece of wood that's really got some smoothness to it, it's got a lot of grain into it, yet you have room to do a phrase on the outside and how you design on it here, that counts. So people will look at that. Hey, this guy's good. So it's not about all the fancy stuff. It's about what your characteristics and what you portray about yourself. Anyway, I'm gonna get off. Let you guys go. Thanks for watching the Dutchman's Wood Shack. And one thing I say, and I gotta change my phrase, is if you're not making sawdust, you're not being creative. Get with the program. Be creative. God bless.